Please be seated. Order. Honorable members, before we proceed with the rest of the business today, I would like to make the following remarks. On Thursday, 21st August 2014, during questions to the President, members of the Economic Freedom Fighters, after expressing dissatisfaction with a reply by the President, engaged in conduct that led to the disruption of proceedings, to the extent that the House had to be adjourned in terms of Rule 56, and the Assembly was prevented from finalizing its scheduled business for that day. The procedure for oral questions in the House is regulated by Rule 113, which provides that in respect of each question, 4 supplementary questions may be asked, and that the honorable member in whose name a question stands must be given the first opportunity to ask a supplementary question. During questions to the President, the Honorable Malema, in whose name question number 3 stood, was given the first opportunity to ask the President a supplementary question. After the supplementary question was put, a point of order was raised that the matter referred to in the question was being dealt with by an ad hoc committee. I nevertheless recognize the Honorable, the President, and gave him the opportunity to respond to the supplementary question. After the Honorable President's reply, various points of order were taken from honorable members of the Economic Freedom Fighters, in terms of which they claimed that they had not been answered. I attempted to proceed with the business at hand by recognizing the next honorable member to ask a supplementary question. These attempts were unsuccessful since the honorable members of the EFF persisted to rise on points of order and interject using the floor microphones. Other members who were due to ask supplementary questions were denied an opportunity to do so because of the disruptions. Members should be aware that in terms of Rule 52, I could have suspended the members concerned immediately. At the time, I opted for a lesser sanction, which was to order the members to leave the House. As members will remember, the refusal of the members of the EFF to abide by the directives and rulings of the chair led to the early adjournment of proceedings, and the question session was not concluded. The frustration of the business of this House to this extent is unprecedented in the history of this democratic parliament. On Tuesday, 26 August 2014, I made a statement to inform the House that the matter was being referred to the Powers and Privileges Committee for the committee to investigate whether the conduct of the members involved in the disruptive actions constituted contempt of Parliament in terms of the Powers, Privileges, and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act 2004. I further informed the House that while the matter was before the committee, I was also considering the implementation of item 10 of the schedule to the rules, which makes provision for the suspension of members where the allegations against them are of a very serious nature. I wrote to the 20 members concerned on the 26th August to afford them an opportunity to give reasons in writing why they should not be suspended. The members of the EFF subsequently submitted responses to me. Honorable members, the principle of separation of powers between the three arms of the state, as determined by the Constitution, is based on a system of checks and balances inherent in the relationship between the three arms. The Constitution provides not only for the legislative role of the National Assembly, but also for specific oversight and accountability functions. Questions to the executive are one such mechanism of oversight. There may well be legitimate concerns about the quality of replies to questions. However, if a member is dissatisfied with a reply, there are appropriate processes and mechanisms available, both within this House and outside of it, for members to obtain further information in line with their oversight responsibility. I have taken note of reports that the sovereignty of Parliament may be under threat, and wish to assure honorable members that Parliament will continue to retain its independence in line with the Constitution and the doctrine of separation of powers. Security was called upon to assist the Sergeant-at-Arms when members continued in their refusal to leave the chamber, in complete and open defiance of the chair. Honorable members, the security services perform any policing function in the precincts with the permission and under the authority of the Speaker or the Chairperson. In terms of the Powers and Privileges Act, the Speaker and the Chairperson exercise joint control and authority over the precincts of Parliament. Let me state that at no point did I call on the Public Order Police Unit during the events of 21st August. I must also mention that the capacity of Parliament's Protection Services Department is receiving attention, and this is to ensure that members of Parliament can be confident of their own safety and security within the precincts of Parliament. Honorable members, the National Assembly must fulfill specific constitutional functions, and it is therefore imperative in the overriding interest of protecting the functioning of the House that the Speaker is entrusted with this responsibility of ensuring that the House is at all times able to perform these functions. The Constitution gives the National Assembly the power to determine and control its internal arrangements, proceedings, and procedures, and make rules and orders concerning its business. A situation where rules were not observed would be tantamount to anarchy. As Speaker, I have the responsibility to ensure that the rights and privileges of all honorable members of this House, both individually and collectively, are protected. You elected me for that purpose. As such, I cannot but strongly condemn the disruption of the proceedings in the chamber and the manner in which this impeded the House's ability to conduct and conclude its business. Such actions undermine the democratic process, and I must urge all parties to guard against this. No matter how little one likes or trusts what the other has to say, honorable members must recognize the legitimacy of all other honorable members to be in this House and be accorded the right to have their voices heard and be treated with the dignity, respect, and tolerance to which they are entitled as elected representatives of the people. The rules empower presiding officers to sanction members for contraventions which infringe upon the House's ability to conduct its business. Members should note that actions such as those that took place on 21st August will not be tolerated and will be dealt with immediately in terms of rules and relevant statutes. Honorable members, I have considered the submissions from the honorable members of the EFF. It is my considered view that the processes currently underway in the Powers and Privileges Committee will best serve the purpose of giving effect to the relevant provisions of the Constitution, the Powers and Privileges Act, and the rules. At this stage, I will not invoke item 10 of the schedule to the rules. Regarding the scheduling of the President's question session, we will continue interactions with the Presidency with a view to finding a suitable slot. I thank you, honorable members, for your attention.
Honorable Speaker, may I please address you
On what point?
on the statement that you just made?
Honorable member, I did not intend for the statement to be a matter for discussion. It's not my intention.
This is Parliament. You
Honorable,
can't make such conclusive remarks about the EFF.
Honorable,
When the issue has been referred to a committee, the committee, we got a letter in the committee that we must investigate.
Honorable
Already
Shibam,
you are making conclusive remarks here.
Honorable
How is the
Shibam,
committee going to investigate when you are making conclusive remarks in this House?
Honorable Shibambu, I've made a statement as it is my right as the Speaker, and the issues of what happened on the 21st August have been referred to the committee, and that's where we end the matter
But
for
as a
now.
member of Parliament, you are entitled to make statements as well
to
contend against what you're saying.
I
You are
don't-
not God. You can't say things and say it's fine.
I don't
You are
intend,
a speaker who must be questioned when you make wrong statements here.
Honorable Shibambu, I don't intend for this statement to be discussed.
But can you please note that we don't agree with all those observations that you have made here. Majority of them are wrong.
You have a right to your opinion, and therefore we will note that. Honorable members, I wish to announce that the vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Mr. Z.P. Jordan has been filled by the nomination of Mr. N.J.J. van Arkorenhof with effect from the 12th August 2014. The vacancy which occurred owing to the passing away of Dr. M.G. Oriani Ambrosini has been filled by the nomination of Professor C.T. Msimang with effect from the 23rd August 2014. The honorable members have made and subscribed the oath and affirmation in my office, and we welcome the honorable members to the House. We come to notices of motion. Does any member wish to give notice of a motion?
Honorable Speaker,
Yes, Honorable Member.
I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the following motion: addressing challenges related to migration, including intergroup conflict, economic marginalization, and the inability to access suitable services. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Are there any other notices of motion? Yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Speaker. I move on behalf of the Congress of the People that the House debate the utterances of the Honourable Minister of Transport and the CEO of RAF in respect of RAPs, whilst the deadline of a public participation process has not been concluded. I so move. Thank you.
Any other honourable member of the DA?
Speaker, I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting of this House, the House debates the effectiveness of Section 139 interventions in addressing the challenges faced by local municipalities in delivering basic services and performing their core functions.
Any other notices of motion? Is that a member of the NFP?
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. On behalf of the National Freedom Party, I move that at the next sitting of this House, we deliberate on declaring a day in the South African calendar as a Doctors' Day in recognition of their selfless commitment to healthcare in South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Ms. Kalyan. Honourable Kalyan.
Speaker, I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates the post-2015 development goals. Thank you.
Honourable Member, can't see.
I move on behalf of ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates sustainable forest management and its contribution to sustainable development, poverty eradication, and the achievement of international agreed development goals, including the Millennium Development Goals. I thank you.
I meant you, but I think you'll have to wait for another 10. Honourable Member.
Honourable Speaker, the EFF moves that rise to move that in the next sitting of Parliament, the House debate the health implication of genetically modified organisms to people and the economy. I so move.
Thank you. Reverend Mishwe.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the African Christian Democratic Party, I give notice that I shall move that the House debates ways that government can effectively implement relevant sections of the Regulations of Gatherings Act, which affords victims effective recourse when a gathering becomes destructive and results in injury, loss of property, or life. Thank you.
The honourable member next to Reverend Mishwe.
Thank you. The economic freedom fighters rise to move notice that in its next sitting, debate the conditions of service and remuneration of farm workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Member, I think you are from the from NFP. IFP.
IFP, Honourable Speaker. On behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I shall move that the House at this next sitting debates the increase of allegations of voter fraud during elections and how this can be tackled. I thank you.
Honorable Member of the DA.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I hereby give notice on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, the House debates the escalating global trends of international terrorism and its impact on our national security. I thank you.
Yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in the next sitting, the House debates an integrated approach to address substance and alcohol abuse. I thank you.
Yes, Honorable Member of the AFF.
Thanks, Speaker. On behalf of EFF, I move a notice that the House on its next sitting shall debate the notion that all public servants use public services.
Thank you. Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker, I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates matters taken by government, NGOs, CBOs, and the private sector in anticipation of flood management. I thank you.
Yes, Honorable Member of the DA.
Thank you, Speaker. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates the functioning and effectiveness of the boards of the various entities that fall within the Department of Transport and consider proposals on how they can perform more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Member at the back.
Chairperson, the Economic Freedom Fighters rise to move notice that the House in its next sitting debate the pace of land distribution and targets for realizing land access for all. I thank you.
Yes, Honorable Member.
The ANC moves that on its next sitting, the House debates measures to overcome hurdles in the development of sport in black communities, which will create conditions for equal competition and opportunities for all South African young people.
Yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Speaker. The Economic Freedom Fighters rise to move the notice that the House in its next sitting debate the relationship between the mining and the earthquakes.
Correct. Okay, so Honorable, no, Reverend Aume, itingithathe loya baba lowa ongale kwakho.
Thank you, Speaker.
Kahle kahle.
I move that in the next sitting,
Ubani loyo? No, I was pointing at the row of the Reverend Mishwe.
okay.
Yeah, I'll come back to you. Yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm rising on behalf of the EFF to move that the House discuss in its next sitting the possible reinstatements of marketing boards in the agricultural sector based on the impact that may have had on small-scale farmers as well as subsistence farmers. I so move.
Honorable Madisha.
Thank you, Speaker. I move on behalf of COPE that the House in its next sitting debates how best to utilize all such property of government that has been mothballed for years. I so move. Thank you.
Reverend Mishwe, Honorable.
Speaker, I give notice on behalf of the African Christian Democratic Party that I shall move that the House debates the relevance and importance of teaching Christian values such as respect and tolerance in our schools to combat the increasing levels of ill discipline, drug abuse, and violence, including stabbings, gangsterism, and the rape of innocent children. Thank you.
Okay. Those are the notices of motion. We now come to motions without notice. Are there any motions without notice? Honorable EFF member at the front.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Economic Freedom Fighters rises to move without notice that the House notes, because we cannot see how a House that is part of SADC cannot note this, and congratulate His Excellency President Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, President Robert Mugabe, for his election as SADC chair. His first assignment in that capacity by successfully chairing the recently held SADC summit. And furthermore, note that President Mugabe's observation that South Africa's continued domination by white capital limits its ability to provide leadership in the entire continent. Thank you very much.
Are there any objections to the motion?
Madam Speaker, may I address you?
Yes.
Madam Speaker, we've now had 3 sittings of the House, and we've discussed the procedure for raising these sorts of motions in the House. They do require notice because matters that are controversial shouldn't be included under this particular item. And that one was not circulated, and it's unfair to spring it on parties like in this manner.
Okay, so that one falls off. Are there any further motions without notice? Honorable Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes that on the 26th of August 2014, Corporal Mulatelo Nkwana and a civilian accountant like Suzette Gates received medals in Bloemfontein for going beyond the call of duty in the Battle of Bangui last year. Further notes that Nkwana, who led company of soldiers out of a skirmish, and Gates, who hid millions of rands under clothes, even when the enemy surrounded her, have become the first women in South African National Defence Force to receive medals for bravery. Remembers that they too, who were on their first deployment, were thrust into the thick of things when Sileka rebels overran the CAR's capital Bangui in March last year. Recalls that Nkwana, a paratrooper and medic with 7 medical battalion, nicknamed the Human Navigator, took charge when they were ambushed by heavily armed rebels and with some of her colleagues severely wounded. Further recalls that without maps and unable to use radios because the sound would give away their position, Nkwana stayed in contact with the commanders via SMSs. And we congratulate the 2 women on their bravery and bringing honor to their job under difficult circumstances and to the country. I thank you.
Any objections? No objections. Any other notices of motions without notice? Yes, Honorable Member.
Honorable Speaker, I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House knows that the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries hosted the annual Female Entrepreneur of the Year Awards at a gala dinner in Mafeking, Northwest on 22 August 2014. Further notes that the program was conceptualized to encourage and increase the participation of women, youth and people living with disabilities in the agriculture, forestry and fisheries sectors. Congratulates the following winners: the best female worker in the sector, Hawakule Mukanya from KwaZulu-Natal; the best subsistence producer in the sector, Tandika Moseki from Northwest; top entrepreneur in the sector, smallholder, Sandra Kurtz from Gauteng; top entrepreneur processing in the sector, Anne Radford from the Western Cape; top female entrepreneur in the sector, commercial, Mponeng Lentoro from Free State; top entrepreneur in the sector, export markets, Nonkwele Mazomo from the Eastern Cape, who was also crowned the overall 2014 winner. Acknowledges that across our continent, female farmers produce an astonishing 70% of the continent's food, but their efforts and ability are most often overlooked. We congratulate the winners and wishes them well in all the future endeavors.
There are no objections. Any other motions without notice? Yes, Honorable Member?
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the National Freedom Party, I move that condolences be conveyed to the wife, children, family, and relatives of the late Stanley Dladla, who was popularly known as Umkabateli. Stanley Dladla and the Honorable President of NFP worked very closely together and initiated programs like Iwanoloka and taking municipalities to the people and many others. Umkabateli was a member of the NFP National Working Committee and the NFP organizer in KwaZulu-Natal. And after this year's general elections, he became a member of KwaZulu-Natal legislature representing the NFP. Stanley Dladla was very close to the people. He was addicted to the service delivery and believed strongly in youth development through sport, music, and business, and initiated a lot of projects in this regard. Umkabateli will be missed by the NFP as a very loyal and disciplined cadre, a humble and charismatic servant of the people, who served the people of Utugela as the first mayor of this district municipality with humility and dignity. I thank you.
I don't think there are any objections to that motion without notice. Any other motions without notice? Honorable Member?
Speaker, I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that 6 South African researchers have been ranked by Thomson Reuters to be among the top 3,200 most influential researchers on Earth. Further notes that the list consists of researchers who have published the highest number of articles and are the most frequently cited by fellow researchers from around the world. Acknowledges the following 6 researchers whose academic brilliance has been recognized: Professor Guy Midgley, Stellenbosch University; Professor David Richardson, Stellenbosch University; Professor Nicola Mulder, University of Cape Town; Professor William Bond, University of Cape Town; Professor Rachel Hughes, University of Witwatersrand; Professor Wadley, University of Witwatersrand. Congratulates the South African researchers who featured in the report and looks forward to seeing more and more of our researchers and scientists making their mark both locally and internationally. Thank you.
I see no objection to that motion. Honorable Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes that on Saturday, the 23rd of August 2014, the veteran photographer Mike Mzileni was honored in Newtown, Johannesburg. Further notes that to honor his work, journalists, academics, and politicians gathered at the SAB Miller Auditorium to thank him for his contribution. Recalls that the 72-year-old was famous in his days for capturing on film a myriad events whose diverse range of images used to grace the pages of publications including Rand Daily Mail, Sunday Express, Sunday Times, City Press, and Drum Magazine. Further recalls that some of Mzileni's pictures were displayed on the big screen during the proceedings. Remembers that Mike, as Mzileni is affectionately called, retired in 2000 from his job as a picture editor at City Press. And we congratulate Mr. Mzileni on his achievements and wish him well during his retirement. I thank you.
Any objections? Are there any other motions? Honorable Member of the EFF.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On behalf of the economic freedom fighters, I rise to move without notice that the House notes the recent earthquake that registered 5.6 on a Richter scale, which left in its wake 1 person dead and massive damages to property. Further notes that now scientific observation have indicated the center of the seismic activity to the concentrated in OK mining zone, and local scientists admits the contribution of mining activity as trigger of the earthquakes. Further advises Parliament to invite independent scientists to advise on relationship of mining and earthquakes. I so move.
Are there any objections? No objections. Are there any other motions without notice? Honorable ANC member, Whip.
Honorable Speaker, I move on behalf of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party that the House knows with great sadness the news of the passing on of the British actor and film director, Sir Richard Attenborough, who died on Sunday, 24th August 2014, at the age of 90. Recalls that in April 2014, the late Attenborough was awarded the National Order of the Companions of O.R. Tambo at a National Order ceremony. Remembers that he has won 8 Oscar Awards for the 1982 classic film, Gandhi, including the Best Director. Further remembers that he has also directed and produced Cry Freedom, a film about the death of South African anti-apartheid campaigner and black consciousness leader, Comrade Steve Biko. Acknowledge the distinguished filmmaker's significant contribution to our struggle in history through his work, and conveys his condolences to the family and friends of Sir Richard Attenborough, I think.
No objections. Any other motions? We then move to the first item on the order paper, which is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party. Honorable Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move that the House notes that the House, notwithstanding Rule 29, which provides for the sequence of proceedings, gives precedence to the executive statement by the Minister of Finance on retirement fund rumors before member statements on Thursday, the 4th of September. I so move.
Is it agreed, honorable members? That is agreed to. We now come to the order paper, the first item on the order paper. Honorable member. Oh, the next item on the order paper is members' statements. Member of the ANC?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The ANC welcomes the opening of Sexual Offences Court in Bethlehem. Our 22nd Sexual Offences Court in the country has recently been opened in Bethlehem in the Free State Province. This dedicated court is located at the Bethlehem Magistrate Court and is equipped to provide specialized victim support services, improve the effectiveness of sexual offences matters, and improve conviction rates, as well as strengthening the fight against sexual violence in the country, especially against women, children, and persons with disability. The ANC consistent stand and fight against violence against women and children continues unabated. We believe that the new dedicated Sexual Offences Court in Bethlehem in the Free State will provide much needed protection to a large number of victims and survivors of sexual crimes in the area. The ANC government does not pay lip services when it comes to protecting the rights of vulnerable members of society, but tangibly demonstrate its commitment to fighting this scourge, and this will remain one of our priorities for the next 5 years. We are also delighted that 57 regional courts will be converted into sexual offences courts during 2015-2016. I thank you.
The DA.
Thank you, Speaker. The Democratic Alliance welcomes the Supreme Court of Appeal's judgment last week, which upheld a previous High Court judgment and ordered the National Prosecuting Authority to hand over the infamous spy tapes to the DA by Thursday. This is a victory for accountability, democratic institutions, and a victory for the DA in holding President Jacob Zuma to account. After five and a half years in court, and 6 court applications, which the president opposed, South Africa will now find out the real reasons behind why the 783 charges of corruption, fraud, money laundering, and racketeering faced by President Zuma were dropped on the 6th of April in 2009. The lesson we can take out of this is that, in fact, the process of holding the executive to account, strong constitutional institutions, and the rule of law are far more effective than big man politics. All in South Africa are equal before the law, and where there's a case to be answered for, the president must get what he's always asked for, his day in a criminal court. Thank you.
The EFF.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As the EFF, we strongly condemn the attacks of the public protector by the ANC, SACP, MKVA, and the ANC Youth League. The attack on the public protector and other Chapter 9 institutions is anti-democracy. We also dismiss a cheap politicking from the ANC, the lie that the EFF is working with the public protector for some dubious reasons. The South African public should know them for who they are, haters of democracy. The public protector's commitment to protect the public and the constitution of the country is indeed appreciated. As EFF, we were not surprised when she was listed by Times Magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. This accolade is indeed proper and relevant. We believe that we must hold those who are in power accountable, especially in a democracy such as ours. We should insist on good governance for a better country. We should not allow those who are involved in corrupt activities to get away with murder. In recent times, she endured insults and name-calling by those who seek to reverse the gains of democracy in this country. There are those in society who think that their leaders are untouchable and beyond reproach, and that scandals like Nkandla and others should not be accepted and tolerated. They feel that their political careers depend solely on these leaders and that ultimately creates what is called a cult of personality. As EFF, we urge all members of society and other progressive forces to support and defend the office of the public protector. We owe it to ourselves as society to make sure that our democracy is entrenched. Our attainment of democracy did not come cheap. Thank you.
The ANC.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the ANC, we are saying the police must be commended for the good work in quickly and swiftly apprehending the 3 suspects in connection with the rape, robbery, and murder of the 83-year-old pensioner, Ms. Mujaji Sibieni from Sereni village in Limpopo. The 3 suspects, aged between 24 and 29, were arrested by the police on Tuesday, the 19th August 2014, and appeared in the Tiani Magistrate Court on Wednesday, 20th August 2014. It is 2 days now after, in this month where we should be celebrating the women of this country. The increased statistics of women victims through crime and sexual violence is heartbreaking. The ANC reiterates its condemnation of violence and rape perpetrated against vulnerable groups such as women, the elderly, children, and people with disabilities. As the ANC, we pledge to continue to confront the challenge of violence against women and children and ensure that our programs are directed at creating a safe and secure society. We therefore also call on civil society and communities to work together with the police to ensure that all South Africans feel free and safe in their homes, communities, and at work without fear of being raped, murdered, or mugged. I thank you.
The IFP.
Honorable Speaker, recently in Nyanga, buses were set alight in apparent protest by taxi drivers due to perceived threat that buses pose to tax revenues. Other reasons have also given, such as the drastic increase in traffic fines and dispute between taxi drivers and operators. No matter the central complaint, it is unacceptable that these protesters not only banned buses but also endanger the lives of drivers, passengers, and even the community at large. 11 bus drivers are said to have been pulled from their buses and assaulted. Even delivery trucks drivers were attacked and were forced to abandon their vehicles. This type of behavior cannot be tolerated and will not ensure that the grievances of these drivers are met. A taxi driver was even killed on his way to work. How can this be justified as a legitimate way to ensure that grievances are heard? People's lives should not be put at least just prove a point. This action do not harm them than good. Commuters have a democratic right to choose their transportation method they want to use and not to be at the mercy of taxi drivers. As an IFP, we support any measure taken by provincial government that will ensure our people have access to affordable transportation. No excuse for such violence should be tolerated. Taxi drivers cannot expect to operate with impact on our roads. Taxi owners must also engage their drivers in talks and reach agreement of salaries as well how to deal with traffic fines. There is no excuse that can justify the loss of lives during protest action. I thank you.
The NFP.
Thank you, Speaker. The National Freedom Party commends the Minister of Basic Education for the quick intervention in Kuruman where roads are blocked by learners and parents. But we believe these road blockages should be teaching a lesson that people are becoming impatient of waiting for service delivery, as these blockages are now taking place everywhere in the country. They started in urban areas and they are now moving with speed to the rural areas. People want what they were promised, like water, roads, electricity, houses, to mention just a few. And they do not want to wait anymore. So if nothing better is not done now, this country will soon be faced with service delivery revolution, as these blockade protests are violent. Thank you.
The ANC.
The appointment of a task team by the ANC government to resolve all water-related problems around Guyana and Limpopo is a positive development. The task team have been given strict conditions and tight time frames to ensure that the water supply in the greater Guyana area is back on track, and that all the affected communities have access to quality water by the end of September 2014. The government has also promised to do an audit of all water resources, including boreholes in the area, with a view to improving and upgrading them. This will ensure sustainable water provision so that the water challenges facing communities around Guyana do not recur. The ANC is moving forward on its vision of ensuring that people have access to clean and quality water, which is why it is committed to further investing in water services infrastructure. We will replace aging infrastructure, improve operation and maintenance at municipal level, and create the required capacity to manage the water infrastructure. We also welcome the commitment by government to visit the area in the second week of September to check on the progress of the work done with regard to water provisioning. I thank you.
Cope.
Thank you, Speaker. In November 1996, President Zuma, then the ANC chairman, was called to speak to delegates of the ANC in Durban to ease dissatisfaction at the party's removal of Honourable Lekota as the Premier of the Free State. As Premier, Honourable Lekota has exercised his constitutional prerogative to remove MECs. Media reported that President Zuma told delegates that once you begin to feel you are above the ANC, you are in trouble, before then stating, more important than the Constitution. In 2007, President Zuma also addressed a gathering in Lusikisiki, and he stated, I quote, I said then that the ANC is more important than even the Constitution of this country. Responding at the time, Honourable Lekota said that if a statement was to be the guiding light for the ANC, then South Africa was heading down the wrong route. What we have fought for, or what we are expected to have fought for, would have been in vain. Speaker, under the leadership of President Zuma, the evidence amounts as to how the very foundation of our
Honourable
existence
member,
as a nation
Honourable
has been
member,
undermined.
if you want to deal with the issue of something you are unhappy about the president, that's not the way to do it. You don't use statements for that. You don't.
As Van Kandlen's pie tape scandals come to
Honourable
a
member,
head,
Honourable member, you don't deal with an issue of criticizing a member of the executive by doing it through a statement.
Thank you, Speaker. Then
You
I'll
do it
conclude.
through a substantive motion, which you bring to the House well researched and properly laid out. That's how you do it.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll then conclude. As Van Kandlen
Don't
and spy tape
conclude.
scandals come to a head,
Don't conclude,
COPE will
Honourable
play its
member.
role in ensuring the supremacy of our Constitution.
Don't
I
conclude,
thank you.
Honourable member. The ANC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. ANC Northwest Government has revised its policy regarding the opening hours of clinics to cope with the amount of patients seeking treatment. Already 9 community health centers have extended their operating hours from 12 hours to 24 hours, whilst others like Ramokoka, Murule, Mahikeng, Gateway, Longley Park, Setlopo, Iketle, Mahokwe, Rapulana, Tsetse, Bakubung, Modergale, and Kudusran clinics have extended their services from 8 to 12 hours. In total, 126 community service professionals and nurses will be allocated to needy areas to cater for the extended hours of service by the third quarter of 2014-2015. As a priority area for the ANC, this effort will make healthcare services more available to the people of Northwest and improve overall health care for all. We are thus enforcing our policy assertion, which get at introducing a patient-centered approach in the delivery of health services by aggressively reducing the time patients have to wait to receive services and medication, as well as improving the quality of public health services. This initiative, Honorable Speaker, should be emulated as a standard operation for all clinics and health centers in rural communities and needy urban communities. I thank you.
The DA.
Thank you, Speaker. The advisory panel on the socioeconomic impact of e-tolls established by Gauteng Premier David Makura in July 2014 has started its month-long public consultations with organizations and individuals. This consultation process aims to solicit views on the economic, social, and environmental impacts of the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project, or the GFIP, and e-tolls. The panel will explore the implications and perceptions of financing the GFIP from the fiscus, taking into account other demands on the fiscus. The report of the panel to the Premier at the end of November will be in a form of an analysis and recommendations based on consultations and research undertaken by that panel. Stakeholders, such as the City of Johannesburg, have already delivered a damning assessment of the e-toll system in its submission. In its submission, the City has suggested e-tolls will diminish the emerging middle class, the cornerstone of future growth and job creation, and dampening its economic impact on the City. With organisations now uniformly moving against the e-tolls and considering that this function falls under the national sphere of government, the Minister needs to come clean with South Africa and confirm that she will seriously consider the mounting opposition that will come from this panel and review the e-tolls matter, as this falls within the Minister's competence and not Premier Makura's. Thank you.
The ANC.
Madam Speaker, the ANC welcomes the sentencing of Home Affairs official. The conviction and the sentence handed to Sanele Zungu a former senior admin officer at the Department of Home Affairs, Melmoth Local Office in KwaZulu-Natal, demonstrates the ANC commitment to rooting out corruption in our public service. Zungu, who was arrested following a joint sting operation by the SA Police Service and Home Affairs investigators, was subsequently found guilty of selling birth certificates and was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment at the Melmoth Magistrate Court on the 14th August 2014. This conviction and sentencing of Zungu should send a message that corruption and fraud will not be tolerated. We acknowledge that corruption is a broad societal problem prevalent in both the public and private sector, requiring the commitment of all citizens in society to deal decisively with the scourge. We appreciate the support and the involvement of the SAPC Anti-Corruption Unit of KwaZulu-Natal in our endeavor to curb corrupt practices in our work environment. The ANC appeals to members of the public to continue to report fraud and corruption to the relevant authorities relating to the services provided
Honorable Member, your time has
by Home
expired.
Affairs and the government and departments. We are saying as ANC, zero tolerance
Vala.
to corruption.
Ahang, South Africa.
Madam Speaker, the cornerstone of our democracy is the rule of law, including laws and rules pertaining to the business of this House. Anyone who fails to observe the rules of this House is toying with the foundation of our democracy. As much as the calls of Honorable President Zuma to answer questions regarding Kandla are justified, Around South Africa condemns the behavior of the EFF recently in this House. EFF members of Parliament need to remind themselves.
Honorable Member, you have ways of talking to the EFF.
Let me finish.
Don't finish, because you must not do what you are doing.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
ANC.
Honorable Speaker, the African National Congress welcomes the intervention by SADC led by its chairperson of the Organ on Politics, Defense and Security Cooperation, President Jacob Gedleyihlekisa Zuma, following the recent political and insecurity developments in the Kingdom of Lesotho. We welcome the mediation on the political and security situation in the Kingdom of Lesotho, on which the leaders of the coalition government highlighted that the political and security situation has deteriorated to such an extent that immediate intervention and support from SADC was needed. As the ANC in Parliament, we support the roadmap, which is in line with the Windhoek Declaration, in which the leaders of the coalition government have committed to work together to restore political normalcy, stability, law and order, peace and security in the kingdom. The ANC condemns any attempted seizure of power through unconstitutional means and calls for peace in the kingdom. We trust that this process will be respected by all the parties in the interest of the citizens of the Kingdom of Lesotho. Thank you.
The DA.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Democratic Alliance welcomes the completion of the work of the Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry into Policing and the finalization of its report last week containing findings and recommendations for achieving improved and effective policing in Khayelitsha. The work of the Commission represents a pioneering step in strengthening policing oversights through the powers given to provinces in Section 206 of the Constitution. The findings in the report contain valuable analysis that presents opportunities for new approaches to police work and for partnerships between different role players to eliminate the scourge of vigilantism plaguing the area and to restore public confidence and trust in the police. While the scope of the Commission's work was local and its recommendations are aimed at the provincial SAPS, Western Cape governments, and Cape Town Metro Police, many of the concerns raised by Khayelitsha residents are shared by other communities. The insights gained during the Commission's investigation can potentially make a positive impact on government policy and programs for increasing safety and improving policing across the rest of the country in future. In accordance with the stated commitment to implementing the National Development Plan in the SAPS, we strongly urge the Police Minister to drive the needed operational changes and pursue productive collaboration with relevant stakeholders as recommended in the Commission reports in order to ensure safer communities in Khayelitsha and the rest of South Africa. Thank you.
The ANC.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The African National Congress is interested in the final outcome of the case involving 2 white students from the University of Pretoria who last month were photographed in domestic worker outfits with their faces and arms smeared with black paint. The picture of those 2 students, which was taken at the private 21st birthday party, is regarded as racist and discriminating, even by the university itself, which accused them of bringing its name into disrepute. The 2 students who posed with headcuffs and padded bottoms, meant to symbolize black women, were temporarily suspended from the campus residence by the university, pending a full disciplinary investigation, but were allowed to attend classes as the investigation is ongoing. As the ANC, we find the kind of behavior by the students unacceptable and show the insensitivity to black suffering. The punishment by the university in suspending them from the residence by allowing them to attend classes is considered by very lenient. However, we take solace in knowing that the South African Human Rights Commission showed interest and is closely monitoring the case. According to the Commission, as part of the investigation, they requested a full report of the disciplinary process and are interested in the measures to be implemented by the university to address the matter and its significance to other learners at a broader level. I thank you, Speaker.
That concludes member statements. We now come to ministerial responses, and I'd like to see whether there are any ministerial responses. Honorable Sisulu.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we appreciate the congratulatory message from the IFP member to the Minister of Basic Education on taking action in the matter of the Northern Cape. However, I'd like to indicate to the honorable member that this country is not faced with an imminent service delivery revolution through violent protests, because the government is working very hard to meet service accessibility and availability. Any perusal, if you will please protect me, Madam Speaker, we listen
Honorable
to
members,
each one
please
of them
listen
as
to
they
the
may.
Minister.
Any perusal of the 20-year report that we produced of this government will attest to this. Communities have a right to protest, honorable member, and that is guaranteed in the Constitution. However, that right to protest has to be a responsible right to protest. I would have expected that a member such as yourself would have pointed out the very perturbing nature of some of the protests, the violence in the protests. We understand that people will have grievances and will find ways of voicing out their grievances, but we must take every opportunity, each one of us here, to condemn the violence that normally is associated with these protests. And every member here, an MP, is a responsible member of our society. The destruction of property, honorable members, is unacceptable. whether it is burning of libraries, burning of science laboratories, or the burning of trains, completely unacceptable. And please, Honorable Member, make sure that this is a message all of us send to our communities. Thank you very much.
Honorable Pando.
Madam Speaker, may I address you, please?
On what?
I would just
We are
like
now taking ministerial answers.
Honorable Speaker, I just want to make a correction that the statement the minister is referring to was raised by the NFP and not the IFP. Thank you.
Oh, the NFP member.
Take note of that, Madam
Okay.
Speaker.
Honorable Pando.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the ANC and government are certainly very happy that the DA finally recognizes that all in South Africa are equal before the law. This is a struggle we fought for. The Constitution is one we gave life to, and thus we do believe that freedom has given us this particular position, and we are happy that it's finally accepted and recognized by many who had no interest in all enjoying equality before the law in this country, particularly the honorable member who shouts greatest at the back over there. We also, Honorable Speaker, would believe that all parties have a right to comment on any public matter as they wish, and the ANC's leadership is able to make comments as it wishes to do. It enjoys the freedom of expression that all of us hold so high. We would say as the ANC that all reports of the public protector should be scrutinized and commented upon, including various companies that some of us who are members in this House were members of, reports which were submitted to various legislatures and which should certainly be looked at. We recall so well the DA's objection to the public protector's report and how quickly it was changed following their objection, and other reports of other members who are members of this House which have not yet been acted upon. So certainly all of us should respect the public protector, but such respect should be as equal as we are equal before the law. I thank you.
Honorable Deputy Minister. I need more ministerial responses.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Indeed, Speaker, the reopening of sexual offences courts, it was a good move by the ANC government. As you know, that crimes against women and children is one of our government priorities. The member who spoke about this course, maybe you will be happy to learn that for this financial year, a female warrant detective, Rhino, from the Free State, received an award for this financial year as the best investigator for securing 13 life sentences for men raping women and children. I thank you very much, Speaker.
The Honorable Landers, Deputy Minister.
Madam Speaker, I wish to respond to the Honorable Bheki Ghadebe's statement on Lesotho. We welcome the statement by the ANC and the Honorable Bheki Ghadebe. The successful mediation by the Honorable President in his capacity as Chair of SADC's Organ on Politics, Defense and Security Cooperation is proof of the strategic importance of the collective that comprises SADC. Speaker, any coup or seizure of power is anathema to the African Union. And we trust also that this process that has been agreed to by the leading role players in Lesotho will be respected by all parties in the interests of the citizens of the Kingdom of Lesotho. Thank you.
Any more ministerial responses? Minister Tetawen Zokwan.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I'm standing to acknowledge the accolades from a member of the committee I'm sitting in, Anna Stein, on the successful award ceremony for women, and believing that that is a way we are going to work together to ensure that where praise is due, it is given without reservation. Thank you very much.
More ministerial responses? No more.
Honorable Chair, can I address you?
No, you are not a minister. I'm
No,
looking
no,
for, I'm
I
looking
need
for
guidance.
ministerial responses. Only ministers
yet,
now.
Chair.
I want more, not yet indeed. Okay, honorable members.
Honorable
That-
Chair, before we proceed, can I address you? I need guidance.
No, you don't need any guidance because you are not a minister. Just now, I want ministers, and if there are none who are giving us responses, then we need to conclude on that section of the business and move to the first order of the day. I see Honorable Mthembu is waiting anxiously to address the House. The first order of the day, Honorable, the Secretary, where's the Secretary? Yes.
Consideration of National Environmental Management Integrated Coastal Management Amendment Bill.
Honorable Mthembu.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. This piece of legislation, Honorable Speaker, is an amendment to the 2008 Integrated Coastal Management Act. It seeks to further elaborate of the provisions related to the ownership of the beach and the sea, which is called coastal public property. Secondly, it seeks to make improvements to the processes for any application for reclamation of land from the sea. Thirdly, it seeks to make improvements to the appointment procedures for members of the National Coastal Committee. Madam Speaker, as the House will know, this piece of legislation serves before the fourth democratic parliament. Both the National Assembly relevant committee and the NCOP relevant committee. Indeed, there were some areas of disagreement between the two houses. And this matter was then referred to a mediation committee. And the process of the mediation committee was concluded, and the NCOP approved this piece of legislation. The only house that was then left to approve the mediated version of this piece of legislation was this House. I therefore move, Chair, that this House, given this little history, approve this piece of legislation. By the way, the only areas of contestation between the two houses was when the authority lies with the state for any land reclaimed from the sea, how can then other people who would like to make use of that land access it? The mediation team came up with the question of leases. So where those who want to use that land reclaimed from the sea and lying with the state can then apply to the relevant minister, the Minister of Environmental Affairs, for the use of such land. Basically, that was the only area of contestation, but it has since been agreed. I therefore move, Chair, that this House approves this piece of legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mthembu. Honorable Steenkamp. Am I?
Thank you, Chair. Everyone, including future generations, has the constitutional right to have the coastal environment protected. The integrated management of our coastal zones is essential to achieving this constitutional obligation.
Honorable Steenkamp, I'm sorry for disturbing you. Can you take your seat for a while here? What is it? Oh, okay. I see this. Okay. So what do I do? Okay, thank you. Honorable Steenkamp, you can go back to your seat. I'm sorry that we went beyond where we are supposed to go. Has given a statement.
The bill be passed.
There's a motion that the bill be passed. There's a declaration asked for by.
Everyone, much of the natural heritage and sustainable use of the coastal region requires the establishment of an innovative, legal, and institutional framework that clearly defines the status of our coastal land and water, and the respective roles of the public, the state, and other users of the coastal zone. There is currently a worldwide trend that promotes the notion of integrated coastal management in the coastal states. In order to achieve this integrated coastal management, it is important to concentrate on A, area planning, B, promotion of economic development, C, stewardship of resources, D, conflict resolution, and E, the protection of public safety and proprietorship of public submerged lands and water. The bill focuses on these key areas. The purpose of this bill is to ensure that the coastal public property does not have a negative impact on the ownership of assets and operations of other organs of state, as well as promoting the use of defensible scientific information in conjunction with the principles of cooperative governance in order to succeed in developing the coastal areas of South Africa in a sustainable manner. The Integrated Coastal Management Amendment Bill promotes the protection of state land with regards to coastal property, ensuring the conservation of coastal environment, supporting ecologically, socially, and economically sustainable development and resource use, as well as determining the rights and responsibilities of the organs of state with regards to the management of coastal land. As such, the DA supports this bill. We urge this House to do the right thing and accept the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Do we have more parties that wants to make a declaration?
Yes, indeed.
You are recognized, sir.
Can I make it from here?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, sure. Firstly, it's important to note that as new members of this parliament, we are not going to surrender our right to make laws to a party that belonged to the previous parliament, which has not made one single law that defends the interests of our people. We know, and we've been told by communities that live in coastal areas, that access to the coast, access to the sea remains a major problem, and now we are told on a bill that comes before this House that somehow our people are going to benefit, and that process is concluded. It was of the parliament that lapsed, and we must just come into this House and adopt the law. We can't do that. We object, and this objection must be recorded. Thanks.
Noted. Any other party that wants to make a declaration? Okay, in light of that, may I now put the question? Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. The ayes have it.
And the objection will be noted. The objection of the EFF. They said it in the line. Yes. Do you want to restate it? But I heard you.
Absolutely, Honorable Deputy Speaker. We are objecting to this bill. We will not support it. It is not good for our people. Thanks.
Thank you very much. But this bill will now be sent to the President for accent. May we now have the second order of the day?
Consideration of request for approval by Parliament of adoption of an autonomous recommendation on the social protection floor by the International Labour Organization in terms of Section 231, Sub 2 of the Constitution.
Thank you. I now call on Honorable Yengeni, Chairperson of the committee, to introduce the report.
Parliament needs to note the convention in order to allow other participating states to be on board, because there is no uniformity in terms of application of the convention by the various member countries. South Africa is advanced in terms of implementation. It already has grants for the elderly, provides protection for vulnerable workers and people with disability, and compensation fund for injuries at work. South Africa has established labor activation programs like Productivity SA, which assists small business in distress. Implementation of Social Security Convention is better than in most countries. Departments of Health and Social Development are also part of Social Security. I move that the report be noted.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. There were no requests for declaration. Are there objections to the bill being adopted? In light of that, then no objections, then the bill is agreed to. Thank you very much. I now ask for the third order. Okay. The third order? There's nothing. Okay. As I said that there are no objections, the approval of the adoption of an autonomous recommendation to social protection floor by International Labour Organization as it appears on the order paper. Thank you very much. Now we go to the third order.
Consideration of request for approval by Parliament of instrument for the amendment of the Constitution of the International Labour Organization, ILO, 1986, in terms of Section 231, Sub 2 of Constitution.
Thank you. Honorable Mahlangu, I'm waiting. Again, yeah, I know. Can I now call again the Honorable Yengeni?
The Portfolio Committee on Labour is having considered the request for approval by Parliament of the 1986 instrument for the amendment of the Constitution of the International Labour Organization, referred to it in terms of Section 23, 231 23(1)(2) of the Constitution recommends that the House approves or approve the said convention. Currently, there are 185 member states, of which 2/3, which is 124, is required for the ratification. The 2/3 must include 5 of the 10 countries of chief industrial importance. By February 2014, already 102 ratifications were received, with only 2 countries of chief industrial importance, that is Italy and India. This means that a further 22 ratifications are required, with 3 more countries of chief industrial importance. In South Africa, ratifications have already been approved by NETLEC, DECO, and the Cabinet. The Secretariat of African Union is encouraging all countries in the continent to ratify. Amending the International Labour Organization constitution will reduce monopoly by permanent countries. The proposal of the amendment is that numbers should be increased from 56 to 112. For instance, in Africa, we have 4 regions and 1 representative per region. The amendment is proposing for 12 to 15 representatives per continent, and those will be chosen on the basis of the population size and GDP. Also, the contribution to ILO will be a determining factor, meaning that the more you contribute to ILO, the more the chances. And lastly, amendment of the ILO constitution will have no financial implication for South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Yengeni. Are there any objections to the approval of an instrument for amendment of the Constitution of the International Labour Organization 1986 as it appears on the order paper? No. Then no objection, then the bill is agreed to. Thank you very much. The last item on the order paper, not the bill, the items on the order paper is a subject for discussion in the name of the Chief Whip of the majority party on the rhino poaching and its impact on our heritage. Honorable members, I have been informed that the Honorable J.M. Tembu will take charge of the motion in terms of the NA Rule 79. I now recognize Honorable Tembu.
Thank you, House Chair. Let us first thank Parliament for allowing this very important debate on a matter that does not only threaten our heritage, but also threatens our very own security as a country and as a people. A matter that threatens our tourism industry and the jobs that we have in our game parks and surrounding areas. That matter, House Chair, is a matter of national importance that speaks to the conservation and protection of our heritage, including the question of rhino poaching, and in my book, rhino killing in our country. Madam Chair, in 1895, there were only 50 rhinos in South Africa, in the continent and in the world. Through our good conservation practices, we have increased the rhino population to over 25,000 in Africa and all over the world. Of the 25,000 world rhino population, over 21,000 are found here in our country. And that accounts for more than 90% of the continent and world rhino population, according to the survey of 2012. This is an attestation, Chair, to our conservation efforts over the years, conservation efforts that have not only served our country and our continent, but efforts that have served the entire world community. We must thank our conservation pioneers for this sterling work. This progress has been acknowledged and appreciated by the international community through giving us the honor as a country to host the World Summit on Sustainable Development in 2000 and COP17, within the framework of the United Nations framework on climate change in 2011. Even the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in Europe, in its first report on South Africa regarding matters of the environment, acknowledged and spoke glowingly about the work we have done in our biodiversity, our national ecosystems, and the broad sustainable conservation and protection of our heritage. Madam Chair, our conservation efforts and our well-earned reputation in this regard is being reversed and negated by international crime syndicates that are well-managed and well-resourced, who since 2006 to date have killed and poached over 3,400 rhinos, mainly for their horn. Last year alone, Madam Chair, over 1,000 rhinos were killed. And that was the highest number year on year. This year, 2014, the number of rhinos killed thus far exceeds 700, and the number is rising. Madam Chair, we cannot allow this as a people. We cannot allow this as a country. We have a duty and an obligation to defend and protect this heritage. We are told that our rhinos are being killed by these international crime syndicates because there is a market for the rhino horn in some consuming countries, mainly located in East Asia. But we are also told, Chair, that in those countries, to possess a rhino horn is a serious status symbol. There is also a myth that accompanies this, that obtains in those countries, that the rhino horn enhances the performance of men in those countries in the bedroom. Madam Chair, whether we agree with this or not, the reality is that our rhinos are being killed. We all have a duty to spare the rhino for present and future generations. It will be a sad day and an indictment on all of us if the rhinos were to be killed to extinction. The time to act to save the rhino is now, and the responsibility falls on all our broad shoulders, immaterial of our political persuasion. Madam Chair, we appreciate and acknowledge the efforts and anti-poaching measures our government has put into place. Those measures include, as we all know, the increase in the number of game rangers in our parks. They also include the coordinated efforts amongst and between various departments, including our security agencies, to deal with this scourge. They also include MOUs that have been signed with consumer countries. Despite these efforts, Chair, this poaching and killing of our rhinos continue. We also acknowledge, Chair, the arrest of some members of these crime syndicates and the heavy sentences they have received from our courts. Unfortunately, Madam Chair, only foot soldiers and runners, those who do the killing and hacking of the rhino, have been arrested. We need to bring to book the masterminds, Madam Chair, the funders, and the kingpins of these rhino poaching syndicates. No matter where they are, we are told that many of them are abroad, we are told. But we need to bring them here working together with Interpol so that they can answer for these dastardly deeds. Madam Chair, we believe that there is more that can be done again by our government in terms of intelligence gathering to make the arrest of these syndicates masterminds possible. We also believe there is a strong need to strengthen, Chair, our security in our points of entry and exits. These are the points where these rhino horn get to these consumer countries. They pass these ports of exits and get to where they are consumed. We need to do more. Madam Chair, in public hearings we are currently holding on rhino poaching, climate change, and sustainable development goals. In KZN last week, citizens of this country made a proposition that perhaps we need to legalize the sale of rhino horn by the state. They argued that there is a market out there. We are aware that the trade on endangered species is regulated by the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. Our people also added that another mechanism that government should embark on is to strengthen the relationship between our game parks and nearby communities. Citizens of this country further argued that ownership of our communities for some parts of this heritage, including rhino, will go a long way in their conservation and protection. Chairperson, there were further suggestions that we as Parliament, working together with the relevant departments, including the Department of Environmental Affairs, should go out to communities and inform them on these matters so that the matters of environmental protection, including the killing of the rhino, become societal. In this regard, the public hearings by the Portfolio Committee are making a humble contribution. We agree, Madam Chair, that the protection and conservation of our heritage must involve in a massive way our communities and our children. We therefore need to find a way of working with the Department of Education to take this information and mobilization to our schools. Madam Speaker, we are also aware of the view that this democratic parliament of the Republic should also engage on the matter of rhino poaching and the negative impact thereof with other parliamentarians in consumer countries. This will complement the MOUs that our government has signed with the government of those countries. We will take the opportunity afforded by the meeting of world parliamentarians in Lima, Peru, later this year to raise this matter. Of course, that meeting will be about climate change, but we will not miss an opportunity to engage on this important matter that affects our country. As we end, Madam Chair, let's again appeal to all South Africans, all non-governmental organizations, all communities living side by side to our game parks, all those who work in our game parks, including our game rangers, our national and provincial departments, our municipalities, private owners of game parks, our children, those in and out of schools. Let's work together to save our rhinos and protect our heritage. On our part as the Portfolio Committee, we will continue to raise this matter with our communities through the public hearings that are planned this coming Friday and Saturday in Mpumalanga, and next week, Friday again, Saturday in Northwest. Madam Chair, on this matter of saving our rhino and protecting our heritage, we have no room for failure. Failure will mean a failure to secure our country. Failure will mean a failure to protect our economy, and failure will mean a failure to protect our people and their sovereignty. We end our debate with what has guided us as the African National Congress on matters of environmental protection. I quote, "The ANC believes that all citizens of South Africa at present and in the future have the right to a safe and healthy environment and to a life of well-being." This is stated in our seminal policy document titled Ready to Govern. It is this noble goal of the protection and conservation of the environment that has also found concrete expression in our Constitution, which the African National Congress was a major sponsor of, which states that, I quote, "All South Africans have a constitutional right to an environment that is not harmful to their health, well-being, and to have the environment, including the rhino," my emphasis, "protected for the benefit of the present and future generation." I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mthembu. Honorable Steenkamp.
Thank you, Chair. Despite only amounting to 2% of the world's total land mass, South Africa is an ecological hub. This cultural and ecological heritage, our shared inheritance, must be preserved. That means we must do all we can to save endangered species like the rhino. In fact, we have responsibility not only to ourselves, but also to the world, seeing that 75% of our black rhino population and 96% of our white rhino population resides here in South Africa. Since 2008, over 3,000 rhinos have been brutally murdered. Poachers are killing our rhinos and stealing our heritage. Government must take a stand and end the ruthless massacre of our national heritage. This is as much a moral issue as it is an economic issue. If we preserve our rhino, we will help to preserve our tourism industry. It affects our ability to create jobs for poor communities that's dependent on ecotourism and affects the legacy we will leave behind for our children. We owe it to ourselves, our children, and their children to protect, defend, and preserve our heritage. Until we fully grasp and understand the part we play in precipitating the extinction of the species and tackle poaching as a serious crime, acting in a coordinated manner, the massacre of countless more rhino will continue. This means that government must focus less on the preoccupation with the rhino trade debate, which has polarized the conservation industry, and focus on implementing tough measures to stop the endless poaching. We therefore call on government to 1. Initiate education and awareness programs that demonstrate the link between people, the environment, and the economy, and build pride and respect for our wildlife. Conduct a credible, independent forensic audit of current rhino population numbers in South Africa, and regularly verify rhino poaching statistics. And lastly, commit to establishing a single, dedicated, joint wildlife crime operations committee, which with highly trained, security-vetted experts and representatives of all stakeholders who develop a single strategy and coordinate efforts from all stakeholders to stop poaching. Now is the time to act. We cannot wait, because the rhino has no predator in the African wild, only man. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Steenkamp. Honorable Chitam.
Thank you, Chair. The rhino is one of the most important species given to us by our gods, nature, to preserve together with the rest of the biosphere. It goes without saying that the rhino must be saved. However, to save the rhino, we have to change how we think about this challenge. This paradigm shift is to remember that Africa did well in pre-colonial plunder. Europe has eaten all of her animals. We must ask why. If we follow that question, we shall see the contradiction of saying, on the one hand, save the rhino, and on the other, supporting capitalism. It is capitalist plunder that is responsible for the attack on the rhino. The myth around the uses of the rhino horn are not new and should not lead to the depletion of the species. However, under capitalism, the rhino has become a commodity like most aspects of our lives. Now, I hear Honorable Mthembu talking about also getting part of that action, commodity and selling. The message that must be sent out loud and clear is that the rhino cannot be protected under an economic system that is driven by profit and greed, a system that disregards the well-being of the people. Just like diamond smugglers, like abalone and perlemoon smugglers, rhino poachers rely on the existence of a desperately poor as their foot soldiers. As long as there is poverty, there shall be people prepared to risk their hopeless lives, and rhino poachers depend on this available army of the poor. To date, our government efforts have been focused on arresting and killing the poor under the guise of fighting rhino poaching. In reality, our rhino is being privatized, given to white farmers under dodgy circumstances. We read about this every weekend in newspapers. The real poaching is happening, and we're paying for it. The shoot to kill the poacher strategy is breeding a wild wealth on 2%, total 2% of our land mass. That is the size of the Kruger National Park. In January alone this year, 11 poachers were killed. There's a war going on here. The conditions of our people who live around our parks should be priority number one. The Kruger National Park continues to have no policy to compensate or protect communities around the parks who are regularly attacked by wild animals. Let's give the people a real stake in the parks. Let our people who live around the national park own it. Let them benefit directly, not as providers of cheap labor to both the park and the poachers. Then, only then, can the rhino be protected. The only strategy that will protect the rhino is one that puts people before the rhino, as it was in pre-colonial Africa. Let's save the rhino. Let's end capitalism. Let's save our people. That is the only real solution. Let me conclude by stating a different fact, that the presence of the public order police in Parliament on the 21st of August undermines the sacred principle of separations of powers and is an attempt to intimidate the members of this House who belong to the economic freedom fighters. It shall not be allowed. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kitam. Honorable Mabilo.
Honorable Chair, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, our central theme to this debate is the protection of our natural heritage for sustainable development and decent livelihood in order to harness our biodiversity potential. Rhino poaching remains one of the biggest threats to our booming tourism industry in South Africa. Madam Chair, South Africa is recognized throughout the world for its natural beauty and landscapes. The opportunity to see the Big Five is a key draw card for both domestic as well as international tourists. The fact that these species like the lion, the elephant, the buffalo, the leopard, and notably the rhino, takes pride of place alongside our most beloved icon, Nelson Mandela, on the South African banknotes, further emphasizes the importance of these valuable exotic species. One must further recognize that Southern Africa is by far many refuge for many species currently being poached at an alarming rate in West, Central, as well as East Africa. The South African national parks, provincial park authorities, and private game reserves rely heavily on nature-based tourism to generate income to subsidize the high cost associated with preserving these natural assets. During the financial year, Sun Parks hosted a huge number of visitors and generated close to 1 billion rand in tourism revenue. South African National Parks manages 21 parks, of which 5 of those host rhinos. These are 1, the Kruger National Park, Marakele Park, Mokala Park, Mapakujwe Park, and other national parks. Madam Chair, one of our key tourism attractions is, of course, the world-famous Kruger National Park. It also bears the brunt of the current poaching challenges. During the past financial year, the Kruger National Park hosted 1.55 million visitors, of which 1.2 million were domestic visitors and just over 350,000 were foreign visitors. Revenue from the Kruger National Park and 4 other national parks subsidized the operational cost of the remaining 17 national parks. Now, the Honorable EFF member Mkitama must listen carefully, based on research, not on empty rhetoric, not on hollow phrases and noise. Research to accurately quantify the potential impact of rhino poaching on tourism to national park has been initiated. However, these initial indications clearly indicate that the impact could be dramatic. Potential implication of rhino poaching include the following. 1, reputational damage to South African image. 2, concerns of safety of tourists to national parks. 3, additional pressure on the fiscus to supplement the loss in tourism revenue. High-level risk identified in terms of rhino poaching.
Honorable Mabilo, will you please take your seat? Honorable member.
The point of order is that the member is referring to a research without, firstly, telling us what it is and the methodology used. Thank you.
Honorable member, this is not a workshop. Thank you very much. Continue, Honorable Mabilo.
Empirical evidence. South Africa must see the threat of rhino poaching as having consequences far beyond that of the potential loss of 1 or 2 of the big 5. It has the potential to have severe impact on the South African ability to exploit the economic potential and related socio-economic benefits that the country's wildlife economy promises to deliver. This rhino poaching must be understood as a direct challenge to the sovereignty of our country. We have no option but to rise together to the occasion. Just imagine South African tourism industry without Kruger National Park. Madam Chair, rhinos are also part of the booming wildlife economy that drives the tourism figures. With more than 9,000 game ranges across the country, the wildlife economy is currently valued at 8 billion and is growing at an annual rate of 20.3% in terms of the turnover. It attracts large numbers of international visitors and creates more than 100,000 jobs across the country. It is our considered view that young people, women, and people with disabilities must benefit from the biodiversity, employment, and business opportunities created by this encounter. SMMEs must also share in the value chain. We call on the country to unite behind our broad vision and program to jealously defend our natural heritage. No responsible government will stand idle while its natural resources are not only exploited, but stolen right before their eyes. Our wildlife industry must be protected in order for us to fight the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Ladies and gentlemen, today it is rhinos, and there is evidence that it could be lions or other species. Madam Chair, we thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mabilo. Honorable Nkoma.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Just before I start, Chairperson, I think that change which we saw where Honorable Mabila came first means that probably I need to get his 6 minutes. At the onset, let me thank the majority party for tabling this motion for debate. Make no mistake, we are at war. Our rhino population is being slaughtered at rates that will see the rhino being wiped out within the next 5 to 7 years. Since the start of this poaching epidemic in 2008, South Africa has lost over 2,600 rhinos, with 760 being killed this year alone, which figure I might add excludes pseudo-hunts. And by pseudo-hunts, I mean hunts authorized or allowed by crumbling, corrupt, and inept conservative services. It is reported that our conservative services in the Northwest, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga are currently beyond repair. There is still no central database or system which nationally tracks and coordinates our anti-poaching efforts. Our rhinos are dying because of ineffective systems, a lack of the required political will, alleged complacency in poaching by security and policing services, the lack of information shared between our enforcement agencies and judicial sanctions that is not yet swift or severe enough. International cooperation remains vague and embarrassing, and it is quite embarrassing. It seems that the required political will is missing, with our government paying mere lip service to the same. We would encourage greater action and international cooperation and less talk. Government focus must also be on the rangers, as well as the anti-poaching units and security services. They are our frontline, and they stand between the poachers and our rhinos. These units must be adequately staffed and equipped. Honorable Speaker or Chairperson, the protection of our rhino from poaching places, or this actually places a solemn and binding obligation on all of us, and in particular, the government of this country, to do everything it possibly can to prevent this wholesale slaughter, and any calls and efforts or regulations which seek to subvert such obligations must be opposed. In closing, let me reiterate that rhino horn has no medicinal value whatsoever. By legitimizing its trade, we legitimize this fraud. Is this the kind of heritage we want to leave our children? Definitely not. I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Oche. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkomo. Honorable Shilembe.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and members of Parliament. The NFP believes that the rhino has a particularly important place in our biological diversity, since it is one of the big five alongside the elephant, the lion, the leopard, and the buffalo. This concept of the big five is a heritage that we should be guarding jealously. We as South Africans are familiar with the big five, and we acknowledge the importance of the big five as a major tourist attraction, bringing with it much-needed economy benefit for our country. Tourists who visit our game parks delight in seeing the big five, and in addition to spending money visiting our game parks, also spending money on the accommodation, traveling, and shopping. In addition, rhino poaching in South Africa has progressed from opportunistic poaching to a fully fledged industry controlled by highly organized syndicates. We cannot say that people are poaching because they are hungry. It is now about grading. The question we have to ask ourselves in this, if we fold our hands and do nothing and allow all our rhino to be poached for the benefit of men who believe that the horns will increase their performance, what will it do when they come for our elephants? Will we still do nothing? And if there are no more elephants left, they will come for our lions and then for our leopards and ultimately our buffaloes, simply because we will be perceived as a country that has no willpower to stop the slaughter. What legacy will we leave to generations to come if we allow our heritage to slip through our fingers? The NFP proposes that the key interventions focus on the effective implementation of existing legislation, dedicated investigation, which will, the Green Hawks, which should consist of a specialist investigation unit to infiltrate the sophisticated syndicates and crime networks that are driving poaching frenzy. Dedicated prosecution. Currently, all the successful prosecution are targeting the poachers, but not the receivers, the couriers, buyers, and exporters, all of whom are at a given time within the boundaries of our country. Once again, the greenhouse will be of great value in assisting specialist prosecutors to bring to book the syndicate members and not only the poachers. Finally, close cooperation with our neighboring countries, Mozambique and Zimbabwe, will be of great importance if we are to make progress in the fight against rhino poaching. Strictly controlling our borders and involvement of our Makosi communities in fighting against rhino poaching. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Shilembe. Honorable Holomisa.
Our chairperson and honorable members. The poaching of rhinos in South Africa is currently taking its toll on one of the most lucrative sectors, namely heritage tourism. Stats evidence reveals that we are losing the battle against rhino poaching. This confirms that we have a national crisis. It embarrasses the nation when, in some instances, these acts of criminality, cruelty against animals are perpetrated by criminals in collaboration with some of our officials. The question that we must ask ourselves as people of South Africa is whether, as a country concerned with future economic growth and its heritage, are giving due consideration to actual economic value of these animals. It is reported that involved in these acts is, amongst others, South African citizens and some citizens of neighboring countries. Whilst we commend the Department of Environmental Affairs and all citizens for their efforts in confronting this matter, a further decisive intervention will be for the South African President to engage the heads of the relevant countries and bring an immediate end to the rhino poaching. Ngexesha beske sabriefwa i-Department of Environmental Affairs, kuye kwabonakala ukuba baninzi abantu aba-involved kule network. But into esiwarishayo kakhulu ngaba basuka phaa kwi-Southern Africa, kwi-neighboring countries, in particular eMozambique. You see, xa ngaba ke ngosaw engage Mozambique, funeka si-understand uba kwi-conflict in that particular country. I-focus yethu mayingapheleli only ku-engage aba baku-government. Siyayazi uba i-Rhino iyadestabilize kwela cala. I hope politically President Zuma I-understand empowerish uba i-role ye-Rhino mhlawumbi kona ingabi ithini kule nto yenzekayo ngosithethayo. Ndiyayeka ke bendicebisa phofu.
Thank you, Honorable Holomisa. Honorable Meldo.
Chairperson, the world in 2014 is a world that is sensitive for conservation. Ons leef in 'n wêreld waar baie moeite gedoen en baie geld gespandeer word om ons erfenis, het sy ons kultuurerfenis, het sy ons natuurerfenis te bewaar. In Suid-Afrika was die oorlewing van witrenosters 'n paar dekades gelede 'n krisis, met die besliste moontlikheid dat witrenosters in die wêreld kon uitsterf. Dit is 'n Suid-Afrikaanse sukses dat deur slim bewaringsstappe witrenosters gered is. So we owe a lot to Dr. Ian Player, one of the world's most outstanding conservationists and environmental statesmen, for this success. With his team, he pioneered the saving of the white rhino from extinction through Operation Rhino. Daarom is het ironies dat ons in 2014, terwyl die wêreld met bewaring worstel, 'n aanslag en 'n krisis met ons renosters het. Meer as 1000 renosters in 2013 doodgemaak en verjaar trek ons al by meer as 700. En hoekom? Omdat sommige mense bereid is om meer vir renosterhoring te betaal as vir goud, omdat hulle glo dat dit sekere medisinale waarde het. Nee, navorsing het bewys dat renosterhoring geen medisinale waarde het en ek herhaal geen waarde het nie. As jy renosterhoring wil probeer, vuil jou naels af, drink dit en kyk of dit iets nie hoef maak, want dit is basies dieselfde ding. Ons probleem is binnelands in Suid-Afrika, maar ook in die buiteland. Meneer, as adjunkminister van Landbou, het ek in die verlede samesprekings gevoer met die minister van Vietnam. Just for the sake of those members with the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, socialist. Ek het die uitwissing van SA renosters op die agenda geplaas. En toe ons daar begin praat, vertel die minister aan my al die voordele uit die medisyne oogpunt van renosterhoring. Het ek geweet dit kan vir bloeddruk help en vir kanker help met afval komende van die Vietnamese minister. Dit wys hoe ernstig die probleem in die buiteland is. So ek sê ons 'n reuse taak, opvoedingstaak in die buiteland, maar ook in die binneland 'n reuse taak. Maar meneer, dis nie genoeg nie. Dis ook belangrik dat ons hier onverbiddelik optree teen renoster poachers. Onverbiddelike polisie optrede, baie swaar strawwe in Suid-Afrika vir oortreding is nodig. In this connection, the Freedom Fund Plus supports hot pursuit into Mozambique and into other countries as a deterrent, and we believe calculated hot pursuit is legal and in use worldwide. And I know it's controversial. We must also evaluate against the pros and the cons of our cross-border national park with Mozambique. We've got a lot of pros, but also a lot of negative problems. And the Freedom Front also believe that the government must fast-track investigations into legal selling of rhino horn. We are aware of the merits and of the demerits of this solution, but it's worth investigating and maybe in the end of the day take some calculated risks to solve this problem. Die krisis is so groot dat ons nie een van die kan nalat nie. Ek dank u.
Thank you, Honorable Milda. We now call on the Honorable the Deputy Minister of Police, Honorable Sergio.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, to members of Parliament and our guests. South Africa prides itself for being home to 8 of the world's official heritage sites, as determined by the UNESCO World Heritage Committee. These 8 landmarks are not sites for beauty only. They are inherently linked to our socio-economic development through tourism. Should any of these natural and cultural sites and their related inhabitants and animals be threatened in any way, our socio-economic security also gets destabilized. Chairperson, regrettably, we are here to debate on one of the threats that, if not effectively and efficiently addressed, we will see our national security damaged and our economy eroded. It is a fact that South Africa, until 2010 at least, was viewed as the primary custodian of Africa's white rhinos, with approximately 93% of about a total of more than 18,000 white rhinos representation in South Africa alone. Sadly, since then, there has been a dramatic decrease in this number due to the brutal killings of these animals by criminals for their horns. Chairperson, the people who plan to kill animals for their body parts are nothing more than criminals who have no regard for the importance of our ecosystem in its entirety and our dependency on it to survive and for the future of our own children. Probably then that is why we are gathered here today to discuss and deliberate on better ways to intervene to fight the scourge of these senseless killings on our wildlife. Yes, there is a consistent growing concern to combat rhino killings and mutilation for their horns. As police, we received numerous lambasting comments alleging that we are not doing enough to increase the arrest for quick prosecutions and stiffer sentencing. But as the leadership of police, we would be the first ones to say the police have initiated a lot of breakthroughs to fight against rhino poaching and other similar attacks on our endangered species. Our Department of Police has developed an integrated and multidisciplinary collaborated processes between the relevant subdivisions known as the Crime Detection Framework. The divisions are the Hawks, the Detective Services, and the Operational Response Services. The DPCI, which is the Hawks, is a champion division to root out this kind of crimes. You will know that rhino killings have now become very sophisticated and organized crime. The organization, transport, and smuggling or trafficking out of the rhino horns are done by a large, sophisticated, organized crime syndicates, which in fact now include the so-called trusted wildlife industry professionals swelling in the ranks of the poaching demographic. That is why there is so now a dedicated special investigation unit led by the South African Police Service Detective Services, which only focuses on rhino poaching. Cheers. This unit, which is located within the South African Police Services Cross-Border Unit, operates under the operational agreement between the Southern African Police Chiefs Cooperation Organization, which is referred to as SARPCO, member states. All operational members of this unit, which are made up of all detective heads of the member countries, are situated and operated at the borderlines, as per the Permanent Coordination Subcommittee of Southern African Police Chiefs Cooperation Organization, SAPCO. Most importantly, we want to assure our people that the South African police are not only focusing on rhino poaching at the borderlines. Police are there to prioritize all types of crimes happening within and at the edges of our ports of entry to safeguard our nation. The cross-border unit is a broader operational strategy to focus on all hot pursuit as prioritized by the South African Police Service. For example, the cross-border unit also focuses on stock theft, motor vehicle theft, human trafficking, drug trafficking, and other related crimes. Madam Speaker, or Chairperson, already a rhino poacher was sentenced to 77 years imprisonment in the Nelspruit or Mbombela Magistrate Court. And this has been one of the heaviest penalties aimed at curbing this crime against our environment. Such successful prosecutions are a clear indication that our police are working very hard, long hours to ensure that justice is done. We can still do more to crack on these heinous criminals, but there are no quick fix solutions because this crime is not only complex and very hard to police, but it also possesses a lot of challenges on issues of capacity, cost, and community intelligence. Therefore, we need a more concentrated, integrated effort between all stakeholders and role players mandated to curb this crime. Yes, the National Commissioner of Police is currently boosting the capacity of police personnel, particularly in crime scene management, to combat this kind of crime, especially the rhino killings. We also need efficient and working bilateral with those countries that border our parks, as alluded to by Honorable Holomisa. We are happy to know that our government signed a memorandum of understanding with Vietnam in 2012 and with China in 2013, and still developing one with Thailand and Cambodia. These are all countries that have heightened interest in the rhino horns. I think the Minister of Environmental Affairs will also highlight some of the countries that we have already signed memorandum of understanding. With the establishment of the NAT joints, then a committee of police, defense, environment, intelligence, home affairs, and all the affected sectors at the Kruger National Park, where it is still the center of majority of poaching rhino horn in South Africa. It is the South African Police Service's hope that there would be better communication and collaboration between government departments and to improve database system sharing. There are so many anti-poaching campaigns, and there could be now an overflow duplication of efforts. What we need to do is to strengthen our already existing bilaterals, ensure that the operational agreement between SAPS and SAPU and Organization of Police Chiefs in the region, as I have said, is formalized to allow a speedier extradition application for cross-border criminals. As the South African Police Service, we want to see a memorandum of understanding that yield to meaningful and impactful action against these senseless killings of our wildlife and our tourism. And we will ensure a sustainable crime combating effort to save our rhinos, our environment, and most importantly, our people and the future of our children. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Sochi. Before I call on the next speaker, I just want to announce that the arrangements of donation of time that is done by non-participating parties to other parties was a special arrangement for the EPCs, and it is not continuing, so it's no longer applicable. Honorable Carter.
Thank you, Chair. Save our rhinos, our heritage. The question is how? To use the word of a very wise man, there is no silver bullet. Since the moratorium on rhino horn trade was implemented, 122 rhinos were poached in 2009, compared to the single digits before the moratorium, 333 in 2010. 448 in 2011, 668 in 2012, 1,004 in 2013. To date, we are already standing on over 700 for 2014. If a multiplying effect is going to continue, by 2019, we'll only hear or see rhinos either on Google or in a library. Is this the heritage that we want to leave our children and grandchildren? It is a basic back to economics, school-level economics, supply and demand. Demand for horn in Asian markets is price inelastic, meaning that consumers are insensitive to price increases. They want it no matter what the cost. There's currently 500 farmers that own rhino. The state of things are standing today, they cannot even get a bid on an auction as they are trying to sell the rhino to save their lives. Communities are fertile ground for poachers. It is time for government to be brave enough. If government entrusts the communities with rhinos, rhino breeders and farmers are prepared to teach communities how to dehorn these rhinos. If a community knows that they can earn a living off a heritage we are entrusting them with, they will protect the rhino. The demand could be legitimately supplied by selling off 2 to 3 tons of horn a year from South Africa's stockpile. Rather than selling the horns to one buyer who could manipulate the price and the market, the stock should be put on public auction. Government must be bold, go to CITES, and tell them that the ban is in conflict with Section 24B of the Constitution. If they are not prepared to listen, South Africa must withdraw if we want to stop the slaughter. I request government to look at the Vicuna parallel. Vicunas were mauled down for their exquisite, valuable wool and were down to only 5,000. But with the will of government, the vicunas were rescued from the brink of extinction and now boast with over 400,000. Satisfy the market demand, alleviate property, learn from history, and let us save our rhinos. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Carter. Honorable Dudley.
Thank you, Chair. It was the ACDP that first started drawing attention to the upscaling of attacks on rhino in South Africa in 2010, raising awareness of a wildlife mafia using helicopters, drugs, chainsaws, and sophisticated weapons. We urged government at the time to recreate a special police unit and beef up capacity to counter this seemingly very organized crime. A total of 3,071 rhino have been killed in South Africa since 2010. And we are told that the demand for rhino horn has become so intense that international museums are being robbed and zoos are under threat. This carnage has, however, drawn South Africans together in our outrage, and we have witnessed a wide range of solutions being implemented, including long-range drones equipped with multiple sensors and cameras for spotting, tracking, and deterring poachers. While this war has not yet been won, progress is evident, and the tide may be beginning to turn. Experts say the unprecedented measures being used against rhino poaching have definitely made an impression in preventing the rhino slaughter from continuing unabated. The ACDP welcomes partnerships formed with the National Defence Force, police and game reserves to tackle this difficult task. The ACDP salutes all involved, and we take special note of the men and women of the Rangers Corps that find themselves escorting tourists by day and fighting poachers by night. We have seen a number of arrests, with some poachers given extremely heavy sentences, but there appear to have been no arrests of receivers, drivers and couriers, or buyers and exporters. In the words of Wild Leaks founder Andrea Costa, you can't just keep catching and jailing poachers because there's an endless supply out there. Now, WildLeaks is a kind of WikiLeaks for the environment, which uses the anonymity of online tip-offs to stem the killing of wildlife. It's the first secure online whistleblowing platform dedicated to wildlife and forest crime that targets top-end traffickers. It has been welcomed by rhino and wildlife protection organizations who say hunters poaching and slaughtering Africa's rhino and elephant with impunity are often shielded from police by powerful connections. Apart from WildLeaks, the ACDP encourages people to report incidents of poaching and tip-offs to the South African Anonymous Tip-Off Lines or Crime Line. Rhino poaching is theft on a national scale, since rhinos slaughtered are in our national parks. Experts say there's no doubt that greed is the main driver of rhino poaching, not poverty, as initially thought. One of the many questions being asked, especially by people who have given money to the Stop Rhino Poaching campaign, is exactly how has the money raised been used? And what can be done to hold this and other campaigns accountable, as the public are vulnerable when they are feeling passionate about this cause? Rhinos are a part of our heritage, and one of the reasons tourists spend billions of dollars and travel halfway across the world to visit South Africa. I'm told that rhino babies are enchanting with the softness of their muzzles.
Honorable Dudley.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now call on the Minister of Environmental Affairs, Honorable Mulewa.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable members, since perhaps the dawn of time, the rhino, Upejan, Tsukudu the rhinoster, the rhinoster, has been emblematic of Africa, emblematic of us as a continent and us as a people. This animal, with its magnificent features, reminds us of our ancestral past and our prehistoric origins from another place in time. In this month of September, we celebrate our great heritage as South Africans and as Africans, and our human connection with nature. The fight to save rhino goes way beyond the protection of a species. It is inextricably tied to our South African heritage. There are those who would ask why. With all the challenges we face as a country to build a better life for all our people, we do place the conservation of animals at the center of the national debate. The answer is a simple one. It is because protection of our natural resources lies in the heart of what makes us as South Africans. Our love for this beautiful land, which is why we will not be complacent as our national security is breached and as criminals decimate our wildlife, among the most abundant in the world. South Africa has always been and remains to be a home of the rhino, as Honorable Member Chairperson Jackson Tembu said. Despite the onslaught of human encroachment over the centuries and man's often cruel pursuit of these animals, they indeed have endured. And here in the southmost tip of Africa, they are home. 82% of Africa's rhino can be found in South Africa. 93% of the white rhino and 39% of black rhino are here in South Africa. And yet, barely a century ago, they faced extinction, for those who may not know. Not just in Africa, but globally. It is because of the conservation efforts of South Africa that the majority of Africa's rhino may today be found in the Kruger National Park, a name so famous globally and associated with legendary Big Five that is simply called Kruger. But our sterling track record is under threat, honorable members. Rhino are being poached in ever-increasing numbers. May I also say to the Honorable Dudley that as the numbers, poaching numbers began to be seen, we were in the Kruger National Park. We didn't need to be told from this podium. So we always hear that a cock crows, it claims responsibility for the sunrise. It is no ordinary crime, but part of a greater, highly organized, well-funded illicit wildlife trade. Those behind rhino poaching are often linked to transnational crime syndicates, as Honorable Member Deputy Minister said. They are operating not on the margins of society, but within it, counting within their ranks those who have the inside knowledge. We acknowledge that as a fact as well. They also have the know-how and the financial means to bring the rhino once again to the brink of extinction. And as signatories of the Convention of International Trade and Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna and Flora, also known as CITES, we have long placed sustainable utilization at the heart and the cornerstone of conservation policies. South Africa remains committed to rooting out the illegal trade in specimens in wild animals and plants, which threatens their survival. Honourable members of this House, we are holding this debate today because as we we as government believe that the solution of the illicit wildlife trade, and in particular rhino poaching, cannot lie in one area alone. Solving the problem also isn't government's task alone, but will ultimately rest in the strength of collaborative partnership between government, the private sector, and NGO sector. And it is for that reason that we really appreciate all efforts made by all our people to date for every small contribution that they've made. The South African government, under the stewardship of the Department of Environmental Affairs, has adopted the integrated strategy management of rhinos, a raft of measures that, working in tandem, will be brought to bear to the fight of this scourge, unlike what Honorable Member Nkomo believes. To ensure the long-term survival of this great African animal necessitates that we long abandon and await, and really just do away with a wait-and-see approach. Honorable members, the strategy as adopted by Cabinet is characterized by a balance between proactive approach of anti-poaching measures, the implementation of innovative new measures in order to bolster the numbers, and vigorous pursuit of interventions for a long-term sustainability. There are also compulsory measures that we believe we must take, and government has also been doing this all along. But we also believe that we need to include the new innovations in this regard. And amongst others, the intervention that the South African government has used in the past with immense success, by the way, and continues to employ, is strategic translocation. Moving rhino to low-risk areas, leading to the creation of a rhino stronghold in the areas where the animals are safe and protected, has been scientifically proven and have resulted in increased population. It is important, therefore, to note that these translocations that we'll be making to other parks, to other reserves, and private, and even to community land, will actually help us to multiply these animals. But we know that meeting the challenge posed by the fluid and rapidly evolving criminal elements require innovation, new approaches that can effectively disrupt these syndicates. We need to do that and continue to do that. Honorable members, I'm not going to get into the area of the MOUs that we have signed. Honorable Member Sochu has already referred to that. But yes, we would like to say, because we know and we have learned that increased militarization alone will not work, it has to be matched with proactive strategies targeted at end-user countries, including but not limited to demand reduction through awareness campaigns. And we are embarking continuously on these awareness campaigns. Already people from Vietnam have been here, young and old children, to learn and to see how a rhino looks like. They are currently conducting campaigns back home in Vietnam. We'll do that in other countries as well. But so long as there's a reason, be it greed or indigence, for someone to go out and shoot a rhino and saw off its horn, we will consider community relationships as the very foundation of our strategies. It is, after all, from these communities that hired shooters come from. It is also from these communities, many of them underdeveloped, that the natural instinct to protect these animals may be superseded by concerns for money because they are simply too poor. Unlike what Honorable Shelembe is saying, when he says that these people are not poor, they're just driven by greed. Indeed, people are poor. There are different levels. There are those who are driven by greed. There are those who are really very poor, just attracted and used. Unfortunately, we have to ensure that, or fortunately, we have to ensure that we work with these people to give them alternative economic means. The ownership and management of our country's wildlife was for centuries in the hands of a few. Generations of South African children were born and grew up alongside many of the country's wildlife reserves without ever being allowed to pass the gate. It is under this government that the dream of many of these communities have a stake in the management and ownership of these animals has been actually realized. To ensure the long-term sustainable utilization of wildlife of which we speak, it is key that we involve communities every step of the way, as we have done in this past week. And thanks to the portfolio committee members, we've taken this war out there into our communities, not just by creating an enabling environment that facilitates rhino ownership and management for disadvantaged communities, but also through creating economic alternatives to poaching within these communities. Honourable members, to lure the lure of the poachers is a strong one, especially if you believe your future to be bleak and your prospects to be non-existent. But it is a road that we are determined to dissuade them from taking. And it starts with the young. The seed of national pride in our rhino and its protection are most fertile in the mind of the youth. The value of pride, responsibility, and duty to protect, once successfully instilled in them, never leave. But we cannot promise them words alone. Honorable Member Nkomo, we're not promising words, we're acting on a daily basis. It is our responsibility to redirect the energies of a young towards useful income-generating projects that mean they remain far from the poacher's snare. Yes, indeed. Please, if you could just be quiet, because we were reading somebody's speech, we didn't even understand what it says. Our very first impression of the recently convened public hearing into rhino poaching tells us that if offered alternatives, communities are inclined towards upliftment and conservation, not crime. We are in a country committed, as a country indeed, and in a country that's committed, that commits to sustainable utilization of our natural resources. Let me repeat, this is our important policy, sustainable utilization of our natural resources, which is why Cabinet has also authorized our department to explore the feasibility of a legal trade in rhino horn. Let's understand this. It's not selling of a rhino, we are exploring a possibility. Because we can't just sit back here and look at rhinos, people looking for horns and really just killing the living rhinos. We have to explore the possibility of this ever happening. If it works, it will work for us as well. The application of economic fundamentals to issues around the proposed legal trade, also known as rhinomics, is among the terms of reference of the panel of experts that we have appointed. Thank you very much, honorable members.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Chishonga.
Deputy Chair, the Honorable House, nari itodelwa runanga rwayo, ndi zwone zwa uri rindwani ya u tsireledza nari kha ri ite mutingate. Mapholisa vha u linda mupo na vhane vha tsireledza dziphukha vha khou ita nga nḓila dzo fhambananaho uri vha tsireledze dzinari. Communities living around our national parks need strong incentives to protect our heritage because there is a profit in it for them. Our view is that sites must help to pour resources into such communities.
Hold on, Honorable Shishonga. Honorable members, please take your seat, and the noise levels are too high. You can't have a meeting in the chamber, please. Continue, Honorable.
Our view is that science must help to pour resources into such communities or allow such communities to sell off legally harvested rhino horns once each year and use the income for community upliftment. If communities earn monetary rewards for protecting our rhinos, rhino poaching will receive a death blow. It is the high profit and low risk which is driving rhino poaching. If the retail price starts to come down and the risk increases substantially, our rhinos stand a chance of survival. It is the illegal commodification of the rhino horn that is the biggest problem. There is something else that must be removed: prestige in the buying powdered horn. The more unaffordable it becomes, the greater the prestige in buying powder horn. Zezo kari sedze uri bathu vhane vha dzula tsini na national park vha ambiwa navho uri vha vhe vhalidza nndwevha, whistleblowers, uri vha tsireledze vhathu vhane vha tsireledze vhathu vhane vha khou ṱoḓa u dzhena kha dzi park. The price of rhino horn must be driven down. If that means increasing rhino farming, then that is the route we should take. We should also consider encouraging Vietnam and China to breed rhinos so that the pressure on rhinos in our country decreases. Buyers in Vietnam and China will not desist from buying rhinos horn if they cannot get it legally. They will buy it anyway. It must be clear to all that science ban has encouraged organized crime syndicates to supply the market. They also have the money to co-opt corrupt officials and entice impoverished communities living near national game parks. Karite mutingate rilwe na nndwa ya utsireledza dziphukha dzashu dzine dza vhanara. Ndialebo.
Thank you, Honorable Shishonga. Honorable Stander.
Ndiabulela Sihlalo. Molweni honorable members, manene nani manene kazi in the gallery, siyavuya ukunibona. 3,374 rhinos have been killed since 2008. And I can give you the official numbers. 736 rhinos have been killed as of today. We must ask, why is the relentless massacre of our rhino being allowed to increase? Those on my right might mock the demand, blame the black market, abuses of the permitting system, lack of funding and lack of intelligence capacity. Agreed, these are challenges, but I call their bluff. Ministers shouldn't whine like spoiled children, but take responsibility. Combating rhino poaching is not a choice, but an obligation in terms of Section 24B of the Constitution, which is stronger than any party manifesto. The only thing lacking is the genuine collective political will to tackle this crisis. Frilly statements are convincing, but the lack of results are more convincing. Ministers should stop the talk shops and act. The 2010 World Cup is proof of how genuine political will can direct efforts to make a success of a project that was largely met with skepticism. In 2010, a great national strategy for the safety and security of rhinoceros populations in South Africa was developed. But in 4 years, little has come of this. The National Joint Operations and Intelligence Structure mentioned here a couple of times today has failed. Stakeholders, including the Hawks, SAPS, NPA, and private rhino owners, are operating in isolation. No one knows whom to trust, with reports of government officials, police, and rangers embroiled in syndicates. There is no credible, national, coordinated strategy or structure. We call on the Honourable Minister Molewa to take the reins, scrap and replace the structure with a new one, consisting of vetted stakeholder representatives. Intelligence has been identified as a weakness by this department since the start of this crisis 6 years ago. Why is it that I can have a list of 72 suspected poachers in my hands, but not one of these have properly been investigated, let alone convicted? You can even call them with the telephone numbers listed here. Gathering and analyzing intelligence will support operations that disrupt organized crime and prevent poaching incidents. It is also the one form of support that governments can actually give to private rhino owners to help intercept attacks on their reserves. It is the single most important intervention. Cabinet ministers, you need to take responsibility. Prioritize rhino poaching when you determine your national intelligence estimates for the medium to long term, and dedicate an intelligence desk to develop strategies that the national structure can coordinate. Sentences have improved lately, probably due to the department's efforts to provide training and having dedicated prosecutors. But cases still take years to finalize, and the fact remains that not one poacher above the level 1 level has been arrested to date. We urge the Minister of Justice to take responsibility. Review legislation to list poaching as a level 5 offence, increase minimum sentences to 10 years for level 1 poachers, and deny bail for repeat or foreign suspects. Legislation is only good as its enforcement. Current permit regulations stipulate rhino hunts must take place under the supervision of a conservation official, preferably an environmental management inspector from the province concerned. But this doesn't happen. The Northwest Premier's own misconduct unit and Mukala Governance and Corporate Legal Solutions reported that the Deputy Director of Biodiversity Management and Conservation was complicit in permit irregularities. Instead of being subjected to disciplinary hearing, he has since been promoted to director of this department. Minister, take responsibility. Initiate a full forensic audit into all permits issued since 2010 in every province and institute disciplinary and/or criminal procedures where necessary. And centralize the permitting system to remain a database of all hunter profiles and their applications to prevent abuse. If reports are to be believed, Special Ops troops were sent into Lesotho to evacuate the Prime Minister while our own borders lie porous and undefended. Up to 12 armed invasions originate from Mozambique and the Kruger National Park on a daily basis. We insist that at least 2 South African National Defence Force personnel are deployed every 10 kilometers along the Kruger National Park's 356-kilometer border. That 1,500 well-trained and resourced troops are deployed throughout South African national parks. Honourable Minister Mapisa Ngakula, I watched you on TV. Saying we are the first line of defense of the Republic of South Africa and its institutions. And equally, we will be the last line of defense. As head of the Joint Security Cluster, you acted very swiftly against some errant members in this House. Do you not feel that poachers deserve similar swift action? Minister, take responsibility. In a joint press conference on rhino poaching, Commissioner Pierre has stated hot pursuits were happening all the time. But when I probed the South African Police Service in our portfolio committee, it was confirmed by SAPS that the hot pursuit claim was nothing but hot air. Much like the MOUs mentioned here today, our law enforcement officials are handcuffed by the present rules of engagement. Ministers of the Security Cluster, we call on you to take responsibility. Facilitate the process to change the rules of engagement and issue the relevant notices. Get formal, written, hot pursuit agreements in place and sign extradition treaties to prosecute suspects in South Africa. Our people, environment and economy are inextricably linked. Government must partner with surrounding communities to provide the necessary education, awareness and protection needed for the conservation of our rhino. After all, they present a long-term source of income rather than a quick cash incentive. These programs must economically benefit the broader community and not select individuals. It is clear from recent public hearings that our people are proud that rhino form part of our heritage and want government to do more to stop the killings. Minister, take responsibility. Honourable Mglimtama.
Honourable Stander.
On a point of order,
Honourable
before the
Stander, please
honourable
take your seat.
member finishes her
Honourable,
speech,
thank you.
the honourable member indicated in her speech that the Minister of Defence has taken action against a member of the House. I don't recall such action by the Minister of Defence. Could the honourable member withdraw that statement?
Madam Chairperson.
Wait.
I wasn't aware that there are 45 presiding officers. I
Thank
thought
you.
I was addressing the chair.
Honourable Stander. Let me say this. Have you said what was saying here?
No.
You haven't said that.
Correct.
At this stage, I cannot really say whether you did say or not say. But besides that, that is a point of a debate that we need to talk to. Thank you very much. We'll look into that,
Thank you,
Honourable
Sihlalo.
Member. Continue.
Honourable Mglimtama, perhaps if you wish to participate in this debate, you actually need to attend the public hearings that we have had so that you can hear what people want rather than grandstand your own creative opinions. Likewise for the ANC, 2 people out of the over 1,000 participants do not speak for 51 million South Africans. Let me categorically state that because no legal market channels have been negotiated or legislated, It would be irresponsible to make any proposals to lift the ban
On a point of
at
order,
the
Chair.
2016 CITES Conference of the Parties.
Stander.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Stander.
No, come
There
back
was a
and
point of order called before you left. Honorable member.
The EFF is not like the DA. We don't follow little meetings of the ANC.
Honorable Titama, that's not a point of order, and please do not talk like that in the chamber. Honorable Stander, take your seat. Thank you very much.
Honorable Speaker, I had my hand up.
Now we...
On a point of
There
order,
was a
Chair.
point of order, Chair, here.
Point
You
of
didn't
order, Chair.
recognize me.
Chair, point of order.
Honorable members, on which point of order are you raising?
no,
Because there's
Chair-
no person here
Yeah,
speaking.
members of the gallery are participating here. I think you must call them to order to understand that.
I'm not,
they can't do
I
that.
did not see them participating, and
please.
if that happens,
We're
they know.
serious here with the
Thank
business
you.
of Parliament.
Sit down. Honorable Minister Zulu. Okay, can we give each other a chance, please? Can we listen to Honorable Zulu? Thank you, Honorable Zulu.
Honorable Chair, I stood up on a point of order, but you didn't recognize me before the Honorable was still speaking.
Honorable Zulu, honestly, I did not see you, and it's true, it's like that. I only saw that one that was standing, and I apologize, but the member is out now. We cannot continue. Thank you very much.
On a point of order, Chair. Honorable Mngxitama, not that one.
Okay, I'm sorry, Honorable. Sit down. Thank you. We now call on the Honorable Tembu to come and close the debate.
Honorable Chairperson, if Honorable Stana has 72 names of suspects, I wonder if she's not part of the syndicates. Because that would have been given to relevant law enforcement authorities.
Honorable Mtembu. Yes, Honorable Chief Whip of the Major.
Madam Chairperson, members of this House are honourable members, and it's unparliamentary to cast aspersions that a member of this House is involved in a criminal syndicate, whether it's speculation or otherwise. It is unparliamentary, and I'd ask that you ask the member to kindly withdraw that aspersion.
I withdraw with respect. It will be helpful for the member to give such evidence to law enforcement authorities instead of keeping that in her possession. Secondly, Chair, we want to make it clear.
Chair, point of order.
Honorable Carter.
Chairperson, I think it's important that we get an unconditional withdrawal.
Honorable Carter, Honorable Mtembu withdrew, and we noted that.
Chairperson, I then suggest that you look at Hansard because it wasn't just a withdrawal. Should it be a conditional withdrawal?
Okay, Honorable Carter, let me say this. I didn't hear any conditions. I heard Honorable Mtembu saying, I withdraw, even before I could ask the question. Maybe you should be saying you should have waited for me to ask the question. I would get it. And so I allowed it to flow. Thank you very much. Let's allow him to speak.
It's unfortunate that on such an important debate, those that we expect to be part of protecting the heritage of our country, we come here in this National Assembly, we grandstand. We don't deal with the issues and even point at what more needs to be done. Very unfortunate. Chair, Honorable Mngxitama, there are three arms of the state. They include the legislature, they include the executive, they include the judiciary. If anybody misbehaves in any of these three arms, we expect our law enforcement authorities to act. And therefore, let's thank all colleagues, despite your differing emphasis, but we all agree that we need to save and protect our heritage. We would like to thank you, all of you as parties, for rising, at least despite certain pronunciation, but indeed many of the parties in this House did rise to the occasion. All that all of us need to do now is how do we take forward this discourse of saving our rhino. That's what all of us need to do, including the EFF. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mthembu. That concludes the debate and that concludes the business for the day. The House is adjourned.
The set piece.